when you're sucking water out, it doesn't collapse your tank. It allows it to vent in, but not out. Okay, so that way they can't overflow or anything, but it allows it to suck air.
So if I put that one-way vent on this tank and these two tanks are connected down underneath, that'll work for both tanks?
Not really.
You need one for both?
Yeah, it would be better if you had one for both.
Okay.
Okay, because what you want it to do is as both tanks go down, okay, then you could still collapse your tank if this one can't draw any air, and it doesn't draw air well between the two of them, you know what I mean? So you're going to be better off. You want your water flow to be connected, but on the air you want both of those to be vented so that you don't collapse your tanks.
Makes sense.
Now, if you notice, we're just a hair above this. So we'll either put a couple pieces of plywood. You're talking about raise it a little bit. But we can put a couple pieces of plywood on here or something before we put our 2x4s on there. Just enough to get it above this. Okay, and then we'll be just fine. We got scrap plywood we can use, no problem.
Okay.
Now it looks like to me that this is being held out a little bit by your pecs. So we'll look back there, make sure your pecs is going in a good way.
Well, once that insulation
back there,
we'll just cut that pecs into
right.
that insulation.
Yeah, and that'll solve your problem. And then we do want them back that way as far as possible, but if you want to cut your foam underneath this piece over there, I don't see a problem with that. Let's see, we'll measure that and see. If that's less than an inch, then we probably will either want to put 2 pieces or backing or something. Is it more than an inch?
More than an inch.
Inch and a half, okay. So the choices are, all we're trying to do is hold that away so it doesn't rub. So we could put a couple pieces of 2x4 in there, which will be about 1.5 inches, about the right thickness, and then slide your piece of 1 inch in.
And we'll still have enough room.
You'll still have enough room. It's going to be tight though in there, you know. It's tight on mine. It's just there's not a whole lot of room to work with there. But what we'll do is, I think since you're going to have your box over here, and you said you're probably not going to be doing too much travel through this area anyway, then we'll probably just put a lid on this, okay? Now remember, your 2x4s are going to be this direction, okay? They're up and down, and then your plywood will be on top of that. So we can kind of cut that back a little bit so that this piece, and we could just put this piece in and put like 6 screws in it or something to hold it in place. That way anytime you need to access, you take out 6 screws and you've got full access.
Where are those one-way air to allow the air to come in?
Yes.
Is that an Amazon order, or is that...
You can pick it up at Home Depot.
Okay.
Now, to fit this right here, there's nothing that fits that. So you have to get a piece of pipe. There's not, and you can't glue to this stuff. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is, I think, polypropylene maybe is what it is. And glue doesn't stick to it. That's why everything's welded. So you see it's all heat welded. So what you have to do is you have to get a hose that's as close as possible. Okay, and then you hose clamp it. Put a big old hose clamp on there. And just clamp it down.
It's not like there's any pressure on it.
No, there's no pressure at all. It's just to suck air. But when you fill your tanks up, then you know, a little bit might come up in here. You know, a little water come up. If you have pressure, putting pressure on it, it might come up in there a little bit. But no, there's no pressure on it, and it's a one-way. So the water can't really push it up in there because, you know, the air's inside there. So it just compresses the air a little bit. Might come up the hose a little bit, but not much. And the main thing is, let's make sure, either take pipe dope or Teflon tape. Tape your plugs real good. Put good plugs in all those that you're not going to use. What it did is, because I didn't have an air vent, like you're talking about right here, because I didn't have an air vent, what it did is it started forcing air out around my one-way little one-way connector. So I took I just went into the side of that and then ran a hose up. If you look at the bookcase in the back of my deal, and ran a little hose, a little 1/4-inch hose right out the top. Well, that gives it enough to vent the air out, and that's all you need is just to vent the air out. Now mine was on my gray water tank.
Let me ask you this.
Okay, that's why we smelled it, because it was a gray water tank instead of that.
The overflow. Does this one not need a vent, but it needs the overflow?
Needs the overflow. That's right.
So it'll be a vent in itself. You don't need to, because the water needs to come out regardless.
It does. So we'll run that to the overflow. It'd be best to put a T in there and run this one to the overflow also. So you have them both run to the overflow.
So when that air is escaping, it's not escaping in the bus, it's escaping out.
Out.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
So this will be your overflow. This will be your overflow. This and this will be an air vent. And then we'll go into one of these for your input.
One of these?
No, one of them on the, well, doesn't matter. Can't really go into these because you can't get a good fitting on that.
And that's the hose clamp.
So you don't want to put a lot of pressure on that. So yeah, I'd say we should go maybe in, we can use, yeah. These should be your overflows. I don't know what's best. If we can get good connections for those, you can use those for your fill and your overflow.
Well, you said pipe dope, I think you called it. Is that some sort of adhesive that you can put on?
It's not an adhesive. It's pipe dope is to keep a threaded fitting from leaking. And you almost exclusively use it on gas lines.
Gotcha.
They have started using some yellow Teflon, but gas lines you put pipe dope on. And also, we used to always put it on the water lines too. So I don't know what it is now. It's been a while.
So with this, get a couple good clamps, double clamp it.
Double clamp it.
With piping and just keep an eye on it because it'll have access to it. Just make sure, you know, the first couple months in this thing, just continuously check and make sure that fitting is sticking because they're not. It's not like they have any thread. Obviously, they're not threaded, but there's no. It's just smooth. There's
just
no
smooth, just slick.
Yeah.
But you could always put. See, glue just doesn't stick to it. That's the problem. Is you can't really put a fitting on there because I think it's called polypropylene, but whatever it is, you just can't find a glue that works on it.
What about putting grooves on this to help the pipe?
Well, you could just sand it a little bit, I guess.
Do you think that'd make it rough enough?
Probably. And then get a hose that's fairly tight on there. We can always heat up a hose a little bit with the propane torch.
And then as it cools, it contracts.
And just put it on there, and it'll contract a little as it's right. And then double clamp it. I don't think you ever have a leak if you do that.
Okay.
Okay. And we don't need to put the fill on both of them. We can just put the fill on one of them.
And then connect them down here, just a little PEX U.
Across, And then that leaves this one and this one, which you can use as your overflow. Okay. And that one we'll just use it as a one-way. Put one of those one-way deals so it can suck air if it needs to, as you're pulling the water out, so we don't collapse the tanks.
Yeah. What about this one?
That's what I say. We'll put a one-way hose on that one.
About that one.
This one will go back to the overflow.
So this will just be something down here that stays. It's just a one-way. And we might have to do the same.
We'll L it up. We'll L it up and bring it up a little bit right there. Now you have to measure. Yeah. Okay. We're okay. I don't know about you're 4 foot now.
Well, if it's up above, that's what I was thinking. Like if it's up above.
Yeah, it will be up above that, but you're 4 foot as far as dropping it down. We'll have to come back up when we get to this. So I don't know if that would be. I think that would be less than beneficial for him to have a
little hump in there.
A hump in there. I think it'd be better if it was all flat, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I was thinking, well, if we have vertical 2x3s, it's going to be up, you know, a decent amount just from the floor joist itself. So yeah, that will bring it up. I mean, Yeah, like that little bottom part you were talking about.
Yeah, it'd be nice to be if it was down that low, but it looks like it's not going to work out.
Well, that's part of it. Go with the flow.
You figure it out as you go. So this is up above this a little bit. We want to put a piece. I'll go cut you a piece right quick. We want to put a piece back here. We have enough to put a piece in between and a piece on that end.
Glad that we went ahead and or employed Wes to modify these wheel wells. I think he gave us an extra 1/4 inch, and it looks like it's going to be utilized, so it's good.
So, but it looks like to me there's going to be plenty. That's going to be like if it's an inch, if we put inch in between, you still have space over there on that side, don't you?
Yep, I still have 1.5 inches.
Okay, so we can put a piece back here and a piece in here. It's going to be, I think it'll work out just right. We can put a little piece in both sides over there, and you've got this thing encased.
I'll cut out this little section right here for the water pump.
And your water pump, of course, will come off one of the bottom ones.
So we're only going to need one plug.
One plug by the time we do that, yeah. And
right.
You can just put a brass plug in there. They're not expensive. Just put a bunch of Teflon tape on there and stick it in.
When I first got these, I was like, man, that's a lot of connections. We'll never use those, but...
Yeah, you can use quite a few of them, yeah.
Cool.
These injection spots are interesting, aren't they?
Yeah.